Russell Moore just wrote a piece that I think will connect with a lot of people listening right now. So here's what he wrote. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a group of men, some atheists, some Christians, some Jews, some conservatives, some progressives, some centrists, from completely different geographical, cultural, and vocational backgrounds. They all wanted to talk about one thing. What would it be? Dad jokes? Nope.
Oh.
Well, maybe that too.
The number of young men they know who seem purposeless and lost. For some of them, the problem was pressing because it was their own sons. For most, it was about their nephews or godsons or sons of their friends and neighbors. In most cases, they weren't talking about the sort of things people used to worry about with boys and young men. They weren't concerned about gang violence or drug addiction or drag racing or street fights. They weren't even talking about sexual promiscuity or binge drinking. They were talking about something else quite different. A kind of hopelessness, a lack of ambition, in some cases even to leave the house at all, much less to get out in the world and start families of their own. You guys ever heard of this?
I've seen it.
You've seen it. Tell me about that.
This is more of a problem with young men, but I've even seen it among some younger women in my family. For some reason, they just don't have any ambition. They don't really dream about doing better. They're just kind of content to stay where they are and stay with mom and dad and not do a whole lot.
Do you think there's a fear undergirding that?
I think part of it is a fear. For some reason, the people just like a couple years younger than me, although some that are closer to me in age, they just don't seem to have ambition. And to the fear thing, we have honestly been dealt a really raw deal of like, oh, those Gen Z, they like to complain. It's like some of my earliest memories were the Great Recession of '08. And now I'm at the cusp of young adulthood, graduating college, COVID hits, economy tanks. We haven't been around that long, but we've seen a lot.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that because when I compare my memories, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s in like just a booming America, right? That was just like America's glory years in the last 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
Economically speaking, I mean, in some respects, culturally as well.
Yeah, during the Carter administration, we had some troubles, gas shortages and all that, but it recovered quickly and grew again.
If you were to look back to your memories of growing up, I mean, it's pretty stark when you compare to what Gen Z has seen.
Yeah, what was it? Somewhere in the late 70s, 77, 78, there was a point where my dad had an excavating company. He had a particular piece of equipment that he couldn't even sell. Somebody took it from him in exchange for them taking over the bank payments so he wouldn't have to pay anymore.
Wow.
But it was just that bad. He couldn't sell it. He couldn't keep up with the payments. And that was the best deal he could find.
That's probably rough to watch.
Yeah. But as a teenage kid, I didn't have a grasp on that. I was more worried about, do we still have a car to get me to football practice?
Right, right. It would seem to me that as Russell Moore points out, it's sons and grandsons and nephews. He seems to be pointing to Gen Z in this because I don't know that I've seen this in millennials. Have you, Lauren, this kind of hopelessness to even just launch at all, failure to launch?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a little bit younger than us.
And you're not talking about the Matthew McConaughey movie from several years back.
Let me check. No, I am not. No. Yeah, his article is called Why Young Men Are Failing to Launch. But he's seeing that, again, he said it crosses cultural, political, ideological, faith boundaries. That what they're seeing, men are concerned about their sons and godsons. They're seeing a hopelessness, a lack of ambition, in some cases, even to leave the house at all, much less to go out into the world and start families of their own. So we're saying that this is not just a Russell Moore problem, but we're seeing this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's happening? Why is this a thing for Gen Z? It's a new thing. Because again, when I met, for the first time, if you heard my podcast series, I met my dad's cousin for the first time, and he's in his 80s. And he would regale us with stories of drag racing, like being chased by cops. He had his car repainted. He hid it in a neighbor's garage or friend's garage, had it repainted. That's what boys were doing in the olden days, was street fighting and drag racing. And now we can't get them to go outside or have
Yeah.
ambition.
I had friends who, back, I don't know, in our 20s, so that would have been 40 years ago, they didn't go out on their own. Like, I felt the need to go out and establish myself. So I'd rent a house with 3 or 4 other guys just so we could afford it. They stayed at home, lived at home. They were the smart ones, but they were working 10 or 12 hours a day.
Yeah, this is different.
And so it, you know, they were hardly there, and their parents welcomed them and said, "Hey, why throw money away renting a house when you're not going to be there? Just stay here, and we'll keep you here for a while."
Now, since it's your peers, Daria, why do you think this is happening?
For some reason, there's a lack of ambition. There's an emotional immaturity where it doesn't click that, oh, this is what adults are supposed to do. And I'm not sure why, but we're a really fragile generation. I'm sure people have noticed that. And that's in part due to, I think, what we've gone through. And you might think it's silly complaining about, quote unquote, what we've gone through. But, like, you know, I'm on the older end, so I do vaguely remember 9/11 and then the Great Recession and then the political disaster that was 2016, and how it seemed that we were just right on that edge where we didn't know what was going to happen. George Floyd, the economy crashing in the last couple of years, COVID. So we've seen a lot, and I think a lot of us are kind of shell shocked. At the same time, our parents really coddled us. Our parents were, I think, the older Gen Zs were kind of the beginning of what is now called gentle parenting, and I don't have a problem with gentle parenting, but I think a lot of people do it wrong. And so you have an entire, at least half a generation that has no resilience, and now they have no ambition.
What do you guys think of that? Good assessment?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to Daria, like just doing everything for your children.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where they don't know how to do anything for themselves.
Yeah, that lawnmower parenting. And you hadn't heard of that when
No.
we brought it up yesterday.
No.
Yeah, it used to be helicopter parenting. Now it's lawnmower. Like, you just mow down any
Any obstacle for them?
obstacle, possible discomfort.
You know what's interesting is on our podcast, one of our first episodes on car seat questions, we talked with Elizabeth Smith about child development, and she said it's okay to let your kid be frustrated, not like because they're hurt or something and you just like, oh, you're hurt, sorry, over there, you know, like go cry by yourself. No, this is like if they're trying to figure out a problem, like one of their toys, and they can't figure it out, like there's like belt buckle like clips and stuff like that. She's like, let them be frustrated. Let them be frustrated. Because their frustration will drive them to figure out the answer.
Mhm.
It connects something in their brain so that they figure out the answer. But if you just solve it for them after 5 seconds of them being frustrated, then they're not going to learn how to solve it themselves. And it launched on Instagram because people are like, no, you can't let your kid be frustrated.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Millions and millions of views on this video.
And people were upset that
Yes.
we'd allow kids to be frustrated?
Yes.
Kids these days.
It's okay for them to be frustrated. Not like,
Yeah.
oh, they're emotionally hurt by something. They broke their knee and you're like, sorry. No, it's okay for them to be frustrated so that they can problem solve and not frustrated forever. For a minute.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what we're going to do when we come back. I think all those are good explanations. Those make sense to me, what you and Daria said. Russell Moore didn't point to any of that. He pointed to something else entirely as the cause for young men today. And again, in this article, why young men are failing to launch. He pointed to something else. We'll get to it in a minute. Christianity Today editor Russell Moore wrote a piece, really interesting. It's called Why Young Men Are Failing to Launch. He's talking specifically about how Daria articulated in the last conversation we just had here a few minutes ago, how seeing a lot of young men with a kind of hopelessness, a lack of ambition, and in some cases even to leave the house at all, much less to go out into the world and start families of their own. This failing to launch, it's a problem in this younger generation. Question being, why is this a problem? Russell Moore has a different theory than our team has, but what do you think? 440-546-2255. Let's check in with Art from Vermilion. Why do you think this is happening?
Hey, good morning. I think there's a couple reasons that contribute to that. You guys were talking about the heydays of the 80s and 90s and just a difference between now and then. Big emphasis then on going to college, going to vocational school, going being the key word, going somewhere. Get out, get a job, go out and contribute somewhere. The ease now of online schooling, you look at how the homeschool stigma has changed in the last 15 years. Before, if you were homeschooled, that was kind of looked at one way. Now it's a very common thing.
Mhm.
The fact you can stay at home and work as adults, you can get a college degree while never stepping foot on campus anywhere. You even look at YouTubers, and I hate to use the word influencers. Those are who young people now are looking at and saying, wow, they're making thousands and if not millions of dollars by literally staying at home and doing those things. So there's been a little bit of difference there. I think the second thing, parenting. I remember going to a basketball open gym. I was in high school riding with a couple of my friends. We got lost. We had to figure out, where is this high school we've never been to? Probably one of the best experiences. We still look back on it and laugh. But how often now do parents not know where their kids are? Hey, check in with us. Text us. When you get there, let us know. Keep this app on your phone. We can track you every single moment. And I get it, but you think, hey, kids need a certain level of freedom slowly introduced into their life at age-appropriate intervals, so that when they reach adulthood, they're able to survive. And there's nothing wrong with kids driving and getting lost, but it never happens anymore. Everybody's there to rescue you, get you back on track right away. The moment anything goes awry, quick, look it up. And I think that's one thing. Final thing, I think the third thing is this. We want our young men to lead. We say, hey, be a leader, step up, all of this. The moment they do, and you guys talked about it a couple weeks ago, there's a stigma of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Hey, who do you think you are? Why are you doing that? You don't think women can do this. There's a huge, hey, go lead, but the moment you do, it is contradictory to a lot of kind of popular thought and theory out there that's going on right now.
Really interesting insights and theories there, Art, because I don't hear you saying this generation is just uniquely lazy. All right. You hear that a lot, but you're not saying that.
We will all get away with whatever we can. And then that's true how it is. Hey, if we can be lazy, we certainly will be. So sure, there's a little bit of push there, but no, I don't think because of a year that somebody was born that makes them lazy or not. But I do think a lot has changed that doesn't force people to get out of their comfort zones. It's a lot easier to stay where comfort is.
Boy, great points, and I so appreciate it because when you blame a generation just for being lazy or dumb or something, it just dismisses the whole conversation. You can't get anywhere.
Sure.
Really great insights.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, Art.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Brian. Thanks.
You bet. We got Mike. Mike, what about you? Mike in Cleveland. Why do you think this is a thing?
So, my personal opinion is you can be the soft parent in a way, but you have to do it with a firm hand. Like, you can be there, you can be comforting, you can be that parent that is okay with coddling your kids at times when they need it, but you also have to be that parent. And like I said, I'm 42 years old, so I'm a little bit older, but you have to have that stiff hand when things go wrong or when they're not doing things the way that they should as a young adult. You have to be able to point them in the right direction. You have to be able to stop and say, okay, look, you need to figure this out. Like he was saying, let them get lost. And, another good point that somebody had brought up to me a while ago, we learned by sticking our fingers into a light socket. I mean, plain and simple, kids cannot do things that are going to, they don't do things that are going to get them in trouble like that now, or get them to realize, like, this is a really bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't do this anymore, because there's so many safeguards on everything.
Great points, Mike. I appreciate the call, my friend. Lauren, what's your take? Because you're a relatively new mom.
Yeah.
soft parenting, as he described it, you have to have a firm hand sometimes, right? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I would describe myself probably as a gentle parent. A lot of people would probably see me as a gentle parent, but you also, like you said, have to be firm. Happened literally this morning. I was telling you, my 3-year-old heard me creaking on the footsteps out of our room at 3:30, and he's, Mama, Mama. It's gonna wake the entire house. So I go in there, and he just wanted a hug kiss and to be, hey, am I still safe? Where are you going? It's the middle of the night. They're a little like confused. And so, I laid with him for a few minutes and I told him, hey, you're safe. Dad's here. When you wake up, you're going to have breakfast. Your babysitter's going to be here and I'll be home by lunchtime. You're okay. You're safe. You're fine. But I do have to go. I'm not going to stay here even though you're, still begging me. We still have to have, things in place. We're like, yeah, I do have to go. You're safe. You're fine. I'm going to comfort your emotions, but I do have to go. I'm not just going to keep saying, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. And I left him and he was still whining and that's okay.
You didn't
still
call
have
in
to
sick.
No, exactly. And I left when I needed to leave. I didn't make myself late. I still, you have to be, you can comfort them and also still be firm.
Yeah. At 7:45, you're listening to Mornings with Brian on WCRF. We as a team are chatting about a reality that Russell Moore identified. He says young men are failing to launch. He's seen across ideological, political, religious boundaries, people coming to him and saying, what do I do? My son, grandson, nephew, whatever, godson, is failing to launch. He's got a sense of hopelessness, a lack of ambition, in some cases even to leave the house at all, much less go out into the world and start families of their own. We've heard some really interesting theories and ideas as to why that may be from our team and from you. You're welcome to still join us, 440-546-2255. But in my estimation, we still haven't quite gotten to the one Russell Moore says is one of the primary culprits of why this is happening. We'll get to that and more of your thoughts in just a minute. We're talking now about Russell Moore, editor-in-chief of Christianity Today. He wrote, Why Young Men Are Failing to Launch. He's seen just this trend. People keep asking him, what do I do? This young man in my life is kind of hopeless. He lacks ambition, in some cases to leave the house at all, much less to go out in the world and start a family of their own. Why is this happening? Lots of theories coming in. We've had some text messages with theories.
Yeah. Someone said, we've worked really hard on redefining what it means to be masculine, as in masculinity is evil and bad. Therefore, our younger boys are lost on what it means to be a man and are confused. Taking responsibility and leading is bad. Toxic masculinity. We're creating weak and fearful boys.
You think that's true?
Maybe. I don't know.
Could be.
Could be.
All right. What else we got?
Could this failure to launch be related to too much screen time growing up?
I mean, we don't yet know the consequence, I think, of a generation raised with social media.
Mm-hmm.
We don't fully know the impact of that. We won't for a long time.
Yeah.
But it could be part of it.
Yeah. Someone else.
Screen time goes back, if you're counting television, that's my generation and even before.
Yeah, we all thought your brains were going to melt, right?
Yeah.
Because you were staring at the TV too much.
I watched a lot of Disney Channel.
I bet you did. iCarly was your jam?
No, that's a little bit younger than me.
Oh.
I'm even Stevens, Lizzie McGuire era. Brian, please.
Totally unfamiliar with that.
Someone said too much social media and doomsday politics is destroying this generation's ability to launch.
Doomsday politics. So what they're saying is politics is making them scared?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's just,
I would agree.
like, everything is bad. There's not any reason to keep going because it's all just going to end and the aliens are coming and
Yeah.
there's earthquakes and fires and,
But isn't there some discontent, Daria? And I'm asking you because this is your generation. With like, oh my goodness, these people and their politics, I can't even stand it anymore.
It depends on who you talk to. Some are very passionate about it. Plenty don't care. But we are still in this environment where it just feels like we're constantly on edge because of everything I mentioned that this generation has gone through in its 25 years of existence. And the economy, it's just, it is scary. And even if you don't care about politics, you can't help it being caught in that, as Lauren was saying, like doomsday, whatever.
Yeah. Let's go now to Caitlin in Cleveland. Caitlin, what's your take on why young men are failing to launch?
Hi.
Hey.
I think it's also pretty just economically daunting. Sometimes I think it can be really discouraging when you look at, even if you do happen to go to college or wherever, and then you look at what it costs to buy a house, and you already pay hundreds of dollars in streaming services and whatever, or you are used to living with your parents and living and eating at a certain stature, and you kind of want to live up to that. And it's just really daunting when you think about the logistics of all that.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's a big economic part to it. But then also, I think, social medias have dramatically affected our relationships with people. And I think one of the motivating factors of getting out there is to be able to, have a wife and kids and have those relationships. And social media has skewed what that looks like and how to do that effectively.
I'm going to do something a man is not supposed to do. I'm going to ask you how old you are, Caitlin.
I am 30. You are allowed to ask.
Okay, I'm not in trouble. That's good. Now, so because it sounded to me, you sound young, but also I would tell you, it sounds like you're speaking from some experience and what you've seen with your own life. Is that true?
It's not necessarily with my own life. I mean, I got married at 21 to my high school sweetheart, so not necessarily, but I feel like I've gone, to a public school and, college, OU, and I feel like a lot of my friends, and I just kind of see it a lot in my world of millennials.
Yeah, you're the exact same age as Lauren, and I've told Lauren many times on and off the air how, just for me, I'm only 15 years older than Lauren approximately, and you, Caitlin. And the world looks so different than when I was starting out, and it's so much more expensive to survive than it did when I was starting out. I've had to shift my thinking because it's not the same.
My husband and I are both in public service, and I'm like, we barely make enough money together with our two daughters.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Because I think folks in older generations like mine and Ron's, we think if you just would sacrifice more, you could make it on one income. And I'm realizing that's just not true anymore.
Right, and I think that also adds to the, kind of ending the conversation when our lovely, as much as I love my parents and our boomers, when they're like, you're just not doing enough or you're not working hard enough.
Yes.
It's true. And yet, I guess I see your point, Caitlin, that wouldn't that make someone hopeless in the idea of launching from their home?
Right.
That they might not be able to make it.
Yeah, it's scary.
Right. And sometimes you have to fail to do it, which is what a lot of people have been saying.
Yeah, but failure at the cost of society is a little different than it was before.
For sure.
Yeah, wow. Great points, Caitlin. Thanks for listening. We love 30-year-olds around here, right, Lauren?
Yeah, that's right. Shut up.
So.
She's like the mirror to my life. I got married at 23 to my college sweetheart, technically.
Wow.
And I have two boys and she has two girls.
You guys should be best friends.
Yeah, we should.
Set up arranged marriages for the kids. It's all done. No? Maybe not.
Maybe.
440-546-2255. Let's go to Elijah in Ohio. Elijah, why do you think young men are failing to launch?
Hey, thanks for having me on here.
You bet.
You remember going to school and whatnot, and then you get into the workforce and you go into training, and everybody above you or teaching you tells you you have to have this degree or this kind of training and this specialty, and it just seems overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And some of us, maybe we've launched once and then had setbacks like health issues or divorce, and we're having a hard time launching a second time just because all the tough stuff we've gone through. The world's been changing as well. Personally, I'm going on 34 and been in manufacturing and trying to switch careers, and it's tough out here.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, man, I went through a career change at 28, and it's I mean, no matter how you slice it, you set yourself back economically to start over.
Yeah, it's very tough starting over.
Wow. Great points, Elijah. I appreciate the call. How long have you been in the Moody Radio family? I'm curious.
Oh, my grandma's had you guys on for years.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently been listening to you for maybe about a year now. I'll throw on the radio on my morning drive to work. I've got the app that way. If I'm driving and I'm listening to a sermon or one of your talks, I'll be able to just turn the app right on before I turn the car off and not miss a beat. So that's
Well, you have great taste, Elijah. I can tell you that. So thanks for sticking with us, my friend. We love you. I love hearing that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, his grandma listened to you, I guess, Ron, huh?
Probably.
I find myself so amusing. Okay. None of these yet have gotten to Russell Moore's theory.
Well, ours are better.
Yeah, ours are good. Ours are
What
good.
does Russell say?
Let's get to that because I think it's pretty interesting. He points in part of his piece, it's real long. He likes to write a lot. To remember the phenomenon when women were asking their husbands, "What do you? How often do you think about the Roman Empire?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "Every day."
Yeah. Once a
Uh,
week. So weird.
He kind of points to that. I think about it pretty regularly, but I taught history, so I
Yeah,
feel like I had an
that's-
excuse. He talked to an expert about it, and there's a number of theories to this. He said, too often right now, though, when our young men are asking what it means to be a man, too many of us offer them Roman virtues. Some of these, at certain aspirational points, intersect with Christian virtues, but the fundamental paradigm is not just wrong-headed, it's explicitly denounced by Jesus himself. So what he's saying is we're offering young men a depiction of manhood that isn't biblical. And so our men are failing to launch. Now, I was intrigued to see this because this was my thesis when I did a talk on manhood.
Mhm.
And a whole lot of guys, this was recently at my church, a whole lot of guys were looking at me like, what? He goes on to say, what are you laughing at? My
I
face?
just like that you called it a thesis.
What, something I said?
No, I just like that you, like for your talk, you called it a thesis. That's all.
It sounds so researched and official.
Yes, like a paper.
Hey, I got to
I
puff
liked it.
myself up a little bit now and again.
Now and again.
I had a thesis. Now and again. Hey, stop it. You're right. Stop being so right. Okay, he goes on to say, how do young men know the difference between childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, other than how much money one has to spend on one's possessions? More than that, how do young men know how to belong, not just as a human being or as a Christian in general, but specifically as men who are expected to define manhood, not in terms of self-satisfaction, but in terms of membership, responsibility, sacrifice, and fidelity? If a young man doesn't know how to take up the cross of Christ to follow him, he will often take up the hammer of Thor to follow him. If by default the model of mature manhood that we give is that of Barabbas, not that of Jesus, if our model of manhood looks more like the crucifiers than the crucified, we shouldn't be surprised if what we end up with is a quest for pretend Caesars and pretend harems. We shouldn't be surprised then if the skeleton, he refers to blah, 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 we shouldn't be surprised when they reach for the Roman Empire rather than a lamb standing as though it had to be slain. Like, as in, we've gotten manhood so wrong, they find themselves in a difficult society, and just being tough won't do any good.
So be namby-pamby, stay at home, and let mama take care of you?
Anything namby-pamby, yes. I got to use that more often, Ron. No, I think what he's saying is that we're getting biblical manhood wrong. And being a man isn't defined by being tough and strong. Being defined by a man, biblically speaking, is being self-sacrificing, loyal, hardworking, like being like Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And our churches are
Faithful.
saying manhood is
Go climb a mountain
And eating
rescue
brats.
a woman.
Yeah, right.
cooking brats and
Esau.
corn.
Yeah.
Jacob and Esau.
Mhm.
Now, again, this is his thesis. I'm not saying that I'm using thesis again on purpose. That's his idea. Right? I'm not saying it's right. Does he have a point?
I don't know. I just don't know. I haven't connected yet in my brain how that means they're not leaving the house.
Right.
Maybe it's just so daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I was talking about with like the economy, it's so daunting.
Yeah.
It's in our mind, some of us, it's not even worth it to try.
Yeah.
The standards for manhood are so wrong and so above what most people can reach for. Why bother?
Like, I don't want to go out and eat brats.
You're
hunt.
Are you hungry?
I am now.
I don't want to grill brats and hunt. I don't do all this like
Mhm.
guy stuff and ride a motorcycle. So I may as well just stay at home because I'm not going to look like how they want me to look.
I think that's the point he's trying to make. Whether or not he's accurate, that's the point he's trying to make.
Yeah.
And he's saying if we would give them Jesus manhood, biblical manhood,
Mm-hmm.
of displaying the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. Love is patient and kind.
Yeah.
That manhood, we might equip them with what they need to launch. In a society that is struggling economically, morally, socially.
Yeah.
Ron, you seem skeptical a little bit.
I'm going to have to think on this for a while because I'm not making the connection Like if we start teaching that now, this Gen Z is probably doomed because they're lost and confused. But maybe Gen Alpha will get the message and leave their homes and become gentle and self-sacrificing men like Russell Moore thinks they should be.
I also don't think you should count. I mean, Gen Z, some of them are like 11 years old. There is still time for them to turn around.
Still hope.
There's still hope.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got that one aspect. Although I think if you took the big pile of ideas that came in today from those of you listening and our team, all those things are true, I would imagine. But I really do think we've been giving a bad message about manhood for decades, like a totally wrong-headed message about what it means to be a Christian man. Like and again, I had to be careful to say this in my talk as well. Like, it's not that it isn't manly to go camping and lift weights. I mean, that sure, that could be manly, but that's not what defines it. What defines it is your inner character being reflective of Christ, whether or not you go camping and punch people.
Don't punch people.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I can't talk about Fight Club because the first rule of Fight Club is we don't talk about Fight Club.
Ron Eastwood. All right, there's some great ideas. Maybe you want to bring it back up on Friday. Appreciate all the calls and texts. We love when you communicate with us in that way. It's great.